Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to yet another edition of the Pure Digital Passion podcast with me, Moses Kemibaro. Today, we're having a conversation with Linda, who's the country manager at Bolt, one of the leading mobility and transportation businesses in Kenya, offering a wide range of different transportation solutions, primarily through their mobile app. Linda has been at Bolt for approximately 2 years, leading the charge in terms of their business and what they're doing in the market. And today she's going to share with us what they're doing across their different propositions and also, more importantly, what they're planning going forward in sort of enhancing their position in the market, but also ensuring safety and a high quality of service for their customers. Karibu sana.
Thank you. It's
Yeah.
great to be here.
Great.
Yeah.
So, Linda, obviously, like many people in Nairobi and the rest of the country, we're all familiar with Bolt.
Yes.
It's a major mobility company. We use you for a variety of services, including, of course, the ride hailing. We also use you for food and other services. And I just want to understand, maybe a little bit about yourself, going back to early days, growing up. Tell us, who is Linda? Where's Linda coming from?
Right. That's an interesting place to start. But right now, I'm married, mom of 3 small kids. Yeah, my oldest is 8, youngest is 2. I grew up outside of the city. You might be surprised to learn. Yes, I grew up somewhere in central, a town called Nyeri, and I was there literally through kindergarten, primary, high school.
Nice.
And that's kind of my background, where I'm from. So I'm from this country, but not Nairobi, outside of Nairobi.
And here is a beautiful place. I think I was there not too long ago when I was going to Nanyuki for the holidays. I mean, it's beautiful out there. It's a fantastic place to grow up, I imagine.
It is. We, used to run around, play outside, glory days, I call them.
Yeah.
Yes.
And tell us again, starting from there, what about university days and high school? Tell us a little bit more about that phase as well.
Yeah, so I went to high school still in the Nyeri environs. My, high school is called Gandugals, Bishop Katimu Gandugals. Don't know if you're familiar with it.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, and that kind of started my management leadership journey because when I was in high school, I was a head girl. So, yeah, I was kind of like, the
Don't
prefect.
Mess with Linda.
Yes, but what that made me realize is actually, I had an innate leadership skill.
Yes.
And others saw it in me before I saw it.
Yes.
And that was my high school journey. And I realized, oh, wait, actually, I have something to offer to the world. I can actually help to shape the direction of things. And then from there, I went to campus. I did a business degree. I am also an accountant by training.
Yes, I saw that.
Yes,
CPA.
yes.
Very good.
Yes, because I realized over time that I actually wanted to get into the space where we can create sustainable enterprises where people are making money and they will continue making money as the economy evolves. And yeah, that's kind of what got me into, I don't know if you want me to go into my career path right now.
Yes, please. I'd like to know a little bit about the journey to Bolt. How did we get here? Yeah.
Yeah. So from there, I finished school and I got into the FMCG space. I got into Coca-Cola. Started by selling sodas. I was actually out as a salesperson in the field, which was very interesting because when I was out there, then I got to interact with entrepreneurs. The people who have shops.
The dukas and all that.
Exactly, the wholesalers, the retailers.
Were you one of those sales reps? Like I remember back in the day, many of my friends did those jobs and they drive the pickups and stuff.
Pickup, exactly. I was that person.
Yeah.
Driving a pickup, taking the sodas, like from the wholesalers to the retailers, making sure that the wholesalers are actually replacing and getting to their quotas. And so my first 6 to 8 months at Coca-Cola, that's what I did. And so I learned the front side of the business that way. And then I realized I also want to understand the back end because how is it that this company decides that, we want to sell this brand of soda and not this one in this region and not that region. So I wanted to understand what are the trends. When do you place what product? How do you make sure that it's profitable both for yourself as Coca-Cola in this case and the wholesaler and the retailer, and you still maintain a good price point for the person buying the soda?
This is a famous supply chain, yeah?
Exactly. So I just got to that place where I wanted to understand the full spectrum of the business from end to end. How do you make this supply chain work? How do you make sure that it's profitable for everyone and it's sustainable and everyone is making money? So then I got into the back end. I did a bit of analysis on, for Coca-Cola. And then I found myself shifting and now trying to kind of see, can I do more beyond this industry? And that led me into consulting. And so from Coca-Cola, I moved to Deloitte.
Hang on, that's a completely different
I
shift. Yeah,
know,
like you're
I
moving from sort of
know.
consumer side
Yes.
to management consulting and that sort of thing.
Exactly.
But one thing I like about Coca-Cola, though, is, and I have a lot of friends of mine who are alumni, including people I went to university with, is it seems to groom people really well for leadership positions in businesses. Would you say?
I think it does.
Yeah.
And for me, what that initial experience did is it helped me understand business fully. Because before then, I was just like, you know what? I want to grow up. I want to make a lot of money. But then without the experience, and yes, I had the textbook knowledge from school.
Yeah.
But before you're out there and you see how all the forces, the external and internal forces, affect business operations, then it's very difficult to bring that reality to life. And what Coca-Cola does for you is you see the whole spectrum. Like you see how it is end to end. Exactly. You see the challenges, you see the output that happens when you do something, right? You see if the sodas are available, when do they sell, when do they not sell? If it's raining, if it's sunny, is there a trend there? Those kind of things. And then because it's a global company, you get to learn from other markets,
the best
other
practices,
spaces.
global best practices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's the best of both worlds. And that's I believe why it's a very good place to start. Plus also there are very many people to look up to. So if you want to kind of groom yourself into leadership positions, I always say the best way to do it is with a mentor. And with a big organization like this, you can always find someone who has the traits that you want to go for.
Correct.
And mirror them.
Fantastic. So you decide to leave, some would say, sugary water and move into the business of numbers and number crunching for Deloitte.
Yes.
Which now probably plays into your CPA credentials at that point, right?
Yes. Although when I did go to Deloitte, I went more into the strategy function because they're different business lines.
So the advisory side.
Advisory side. You're familiar with how consultancy firms work. Yes. So I went into advisory because I realized that I kind of enjoy thinking about the future for multiple companies across multiple sectors. And that's what the advisory arm of Deloitte as a consulting firm was able to do for me. So, we draft 5-year, 3-year plans for different companies, from large companies, mid-size, small. And, we'd sit with them. We understand their operations. We understand their aspirations. We understand the markets they operate in. And then we develop something for them. And we tell them, you know what, in 5 years, if you want to get to this number of markets and sell all these products, this is a potential roadmap that can get you there. And that's very interesting because then, you do this with a company and you see it coming to life. And I spent 9 years almost.
Oh, that was a long stint, huh?
Yes. I spent 9 years in that space and I worked across different industries, consumer business, finance, telecom, and the NGO space as well.
Oh, really? The nonprofits and stuff?
Nonprofit space.
So chances are doing this work must have given you an extremely good vantage point, or even a platform for what you do today, because you start to understand business processes, you start to understand the cause and effect, how things work in macroeconomic scenarios, and of course, what those interventions can do for a business, right?
Exactly. And the beauty, I say, about being a management consultant is you get to test your ideas through other people's businesses.
Becomes a petri dish.
Yes, exactly. And because when you look at things, depending on the environment, depending on the industry, then you're like, you know what? This solution could work for this company. And so you lay it out for them, you give them the pros, the cons, and the potential profit or impact that it will have over time. And it's such a beautiful thing to actually see a solution that you suggest come into life within a company and helping them to become profitable and impactful. I think that was what I really enjoyed about being a strategy consultant. And then I changed a lot, as you can see.
But 9 years was a long stint.
Yes. And I really enjoyed it. And then I realized I was missing actually being in the weeds of it, if I can say it, like being the person doing the work.
The entrepreneur side.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So I really love the thinking and coming up with a solution and seeing how it can play out. But I also quite enjoy the implementation part. And that's why for me, when this opportunity at Bolts came up, it was a perfect convergence of both worlds. Because in my current role now, I get to do both. I get to think about what could the future look like for Bolts in this country. And then together with my team, we get to live out that future. So that's fantastic for me.
Let's talk about Bolt as a business because, I'll never forget my first experience of calling a taxi. And I think, obviously this was even pre the other company, which I will not name. But I think it was Easy Taxi was the first in the market back in the day, which I think was part of the Rocket Internet or what is Jumia today. And I'll never forget that experience of, I think it was at Nation Center. And then we'd heard about it and I was kind of like, okay, let me give this a go. Instead of grabbing a random taxi in front of Nation Center, let me try this thing. So I pushed the button.
Yeah.
And then a guy called me back and said, okay, are you at Nation Center? I said, yes. And he said, okay, I'm here. I'm across the road. Okay. Which car? Okay. Those days, I don't think you knew the color of the car.
Yes.
I said, okay, so we go? Yes, okay. I walked. I got in the car. Okay. And it was very weird because I'd use taxis all the time. But here I am, I'm getting a price that, significantly cheaper than what it would normally cost. And then he took me to Kileleshwa, which is where I lived at the time. And that was it. And I remember those days I used to have a cab guy called Karanja. And Karanja was a very nice person, but he had a big fundamental problem. Because when you take a taxi, or rather call him, he tell you, in fact, I can even see your roof from here. I'm almost there. And the dude then shows up 30 minutes later. And I remember it so clearly in my mind that this was probably 2 or 3 days later. I actually missed a very important meeting because of that. Then another opportunity came up to try out Easy Taxi. The guy showed up in 3 minutes. And I went for my meeting and all as well. And from that point on, consumer behavior for me changed. I could not ever consider using a regular taxi unless there was no alternative like Easy Taxi. And of course, subsequently, the market has evolved a great deal. And I think at some point, obviously, Bolt is what we know it as today. And before that, it was called Taxify. But maybe you can tell us a little bit about maybe the backdrop or the story of Taxify to Bolt, possibly as a precursor to your time there. What is that journey? And then maybe the second thing I'd like to ask you is, what is it that drew you or appealed to you about joining Bolt?
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first part of the question, it was truly before my time, but I do know a little bit of the story and the roots of Taxify, which is now Bolt today.
Yeah.
And it's kind of actually answers the second question a little bit because one of the things that I find very inspiring about working at Bolt is that Bolt was started by a 19-year-old. And this guy, Marcus, wakes up one day and he's like, you know what? Kind of similar to your story, right? He's been having not great experiences with traditional taxis, and he decides there has to be a different way to do this. And so he sits with, writes a bunch of code, goes to the street, signs up drivers, and that's how Taxify was born by a 19-year-old.
And this is in Estonia, right?
In Estonia, yes. And for me, that's very inspiring because I'm like, wow, this thing was born out of a teenager's mind. Look at the capacity that young people have, because I'm very passionate about young people. And I think that with the right kind of encouragement and backing, great things can come from young people. So that's part of the story. And then the second part of the story is that now, because it was started by a young person with not so much money, coming up against massive corporations that are already in this space.
Those we will not name.
Yes, exactly. And so Taxify, the team at Taxify then learned to do more with less. And we call ourselves badgers because I don't know if you're familiar with the badger animal. This animal goes anywhere. A honey badger will go into a beehive and not care about getting stung to get the honey. A honey badger will fight with a snake. A honey badger will fight with a lion. And this is kind of the culture we have at Bolt, where nothing is impossible. Like, we just keep going, we keep pushing. There's obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, but we get it done. And we're about, getting things done. So that's very inspiring for me. And over time, we've grown now. The company globally is 10 plus years. So in fact, we joke we're no longer children in the space, because not only have we grown in age, years wise, but also the business has expanded.
The global footprint.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The global footprint is it's
How
grown
big is it?
exponentially. We're in 44 plus countries now.
44.
I believe, yes. And we have different verticals or business lines, as we call it. So we have ride hailing, which of course is the biggest because it's the one that started. Then we also have Bolt Food. We also have micromobility, where in many countries, like in Europe, we have scooters, we have self-drive vehicles, we have a whole host of things that we offer now, all in 10 years. And it's because of that culture and that resilience of we get things done. We do more with less. And so now to the second point, when I learned about Bolt, because somebody approached me. So it was actually someone came and told me, hey, you know, this organization is here and we think you'd be a good fit. And I was like, I don't know. I'm not sure. And so they gave this story to me, right? And I was like, I resonate.
And you've been in a corporate background all this time, right?
Exactly. And so, yes, I knew there was a Bolt somewhere, but then it's the same way, you know, there's 1,000 other companies.
Correct.
It had never really hit me that it would be a space that I would fit in and thrive and actually contribute towards. But then when I learned what the company is about, the values behind the company, and how it's grown over the years, despite all the difficulties in the space, then I was inspired and I was like, you know what, there's an opportunity here. There's something we can do with what's in front of us.
For you, it sounds to me like what you're saying is that this was new territory. This was a new landscape to conquer, something different, you know, a new puzzle to solve.
Exactly. Because it's very interesting. When I was a consultant, I had done multiple strategies across multiple industries. I'd never worked in transport. Private or public transport.
Not to mention a tech startup,
right? Yes. And so I had done pieces in the tech space, but there was never convergence between, you know, technology and transport.
And transportation,
And to be honest, maybe I'd not actually seen that there could be a link between the two, which is also exciting for me. I like new things. I think because I'm always constantly evolving and I'm looking for a challenge and what next and how can I improve myself and add value wherever I'm at. So I was like, this is a tech-driven company, and this actually is what really helps a lot. When you're trying to do more with less, you really need to rely on technology to get you there. And these are the things that I found when I joined at Bolt, and it's quite interesting to see the whole interplay between transport and tech. Yeah.
So tell me, understand better. So you get to Bolt.
Yes.
I know initially you weren't the country manager. You came into a certain role.
Yes.
What was that like transitioning in, joining in? Because you know there's always that what I think the job is or the company is, and then this is what it is when you get there. Yeah. How was that? How did that go with you? And then given the fact that you're coming from the Coca-Colas and the Deloittes, what is that transition like? Because one of the things I've seen, given that I've worked in technology my entire life, so I've worked in many startups, and I always see that moment of truth with the seasoned, well-grounded, sort of corporate personality arriving in this slightly random, slightly unclear environment, which is typical of tech startups.
Yes.
And that moment of realization, it's not what I thought it was. So I don't know if they had that moment of truth as well.
I did. I think that when I joined, and it was one of the things I was intentional about, there was always, even as I was joining, there was conversations around one day you could potentially lead this organization. But like I said, it was new. There were pieces that I could carry from previous experiences,
correct,
but I hadn't quite been in the space. And so we came to an agreement that, you know what, you can start off at, it's called senior operations manager role, which basically it's not the leadership of the country. It's more the tech, the operational leadership of the business.
COO kind of.
Yes, it's kind of like the business. And in this role, how it is, especially at Bolt, is you do the work. And I really wanted to do the work because I find it very, it doesn't quite resonate with me as a manager and a leader to be telling people what to do if I actually don't know what should be done. And when you work in the tech space with a tech company, if you don't know how the tech works, if you don't know how we generate the numbers we generate, if you don't know which levers will lead to what impact, then how can you tell somebody else?
So you had to get in the trenches.
Yes. And so I did that, and it was, it's a change.
Baptism of fire?
Yeah, because when you've done something for 9 years, for example, you know it. You don't have to strain so much to get output. But then when it's a new space, you're learning this app, you're learning the tech behind it, you're learning what the numbers mean, you're learning how to generate the numbers. There was a lot of growth and learning and having to say, I don't know. And I need someone
That's
to
wonderful.
tell me this. Yes. So it's a good ego check. It keeps you like, you see how much more you need to keep growing.
Yeah. It's like that saying, I think that sort of gained a lot of currency during COVID. I think it's, is it Alan Toffler?
Yeah.
Who says, the future is going to be about those who are able to learn and relearn. So
Yes.
basically, your skill sets will be about that evolution and continuously relearning things from a new perspective.
Yes.
But I imagine also, coming into the tech space, I imagine the excitement of being kind of like in this new, exciting new world, as it were. And of course, getting grounded in the business.
Yes.
What are some of the challenges and situations that you encountered coming into this role? Because as we know, the transport sector and particularly ride hailing, there have been issues that we're aware of, especially around compensation for drivers and licensing. I think the regulator came into that space recently. How are you guys tackling some of these issues and challenges that sort of seem endemic to this space already, given the fact it's disrupting an area that is quite pervasive in the market?
Yes. And it's true, when I came into it, like first couple of months when I joined, there wasn't regulation per se. There was conversations happening about regulations, but it had not yet been passed.
Yes.
And so I come into this space, I have my own internal learning and things that I'm doing. And then the environment is changing and shifting and evolving so much, because what we've seen in the ride hailing industry is there's a whole lot more awareness now. There are more players in the industry. It's growing, and anywhere where there's growth, there's growing pains. So I see all these things as growing pain. The regulations, the safety issues. But to start with the regulations now, nobody quite knew exactly what this is, right? Because the initial concept was, hey, we have an app. It is online. You can get a cab. It was that basic. But as it grew and the numbers, became sizable, then it was time for the players to define actually what industry is this? Is it tech? Is it ICT? Is it transport?
Exactly.
Where is it? If you have, like, we have a food division, where does it fall? Which regulatory authority is supposed to define all these things?
It's not falling in the typical boundaries.
Yes, exactly. It permeates so many. And then there's questions also around pricing, because key questions come in on, is this a space that should be regulated from a price perspective, or is it a free market? And because it's so new, even globally, there were very few good practice areas that governments, for example, could pick. We as private companies, we can look at what is happening in other markets we operate and bring that into Kenya, for example. But it's probably a bit harder, say, for the regulator to do so unless you're looking at other regulators.
Correct.
So I came into this space where everybody was trying to figure it out, and everybody, of course, it's a business. And so everybody wants to maximize what they can get out of it. And sometimes the challenge is balancing short-term gains with long-term sustainability.
Correct.
And with an industry that's very young, it's hard to see the long-term sustainability of it. And so we got to a place where everyone is just looking at short-term here and now. If I'm a driver, I'm looking at how much can I make of this thing now? If a platform operator like Bolt, and perhaps maybe I've not been in other spaces, then I'm also looking at, okay, how can I maximize now for smaller players? Larger players are thinking, okay, how do we make it sustainable in the long run? And so there are very many varied interests when we, came to now defining what the regulation was. But, we got there. We got regulated. It was decided that the regulator would be NTSA because it's primarily transport still. And we decided at least top level on the pricing, what it would look like in a way that seems fair for all.
Yes.
So that piece was done. We got to learn each other in the process. The platform operators got to learn NTSA. We got to learn about our driver partners and vice versa. So now we actually have decent rapport, if I may say, and as well as other industry players, actually. We all sort of know each other now. So I think that's one good thing that came out of it. And then, we just kept moving from there. And we now, as the industry grows, I keep saying that sometimes when you're dealing with large volumes, a lot of people are moving through our platforms. Some issues are bound to come up, around safety. And so we got into this space where for us, it's a big priority to keep our driver partners and our riders safe.
Correct.
And when the industry was small, these issues were not really there. But,
as it scaled up. Yeah?
Exactly. Yeah. So they come to life. And so we realized over time that we actually need to be more proactive, because we, from the start probably had reactive measures. If something happens to me when I'm on a trip, for example, there was a way that could be managed.
Correct.
But then we realized we need to do a bit more. What can we do to actually safeguard and prevent as much as possible? And so we started training programs for our drivers. Before you get on the road, you must get trained. We introduced lots of safety features. A few that I'd like to call out are like the SOS button, where
tell us a bit more about those features. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So for the SOS button, basically, if we're on a trip, I'm your driver, you're the passenger, and something happens where I feel maybe this trip will not end well, or you feel that this trip will not end well.
Oh, yes.
You press a button and somebody calls you back and they ask you what's the nature of your emergency. So if, say, we got into an accident, then an ambulance can come over. If it's a security thing, if it seems that one of the parties will, attack the other, for example, then you can say, I think I need security help here.
Wow.
So that's what the SOS button does. And we also have another feature, which is we call it trip anomaly. And basically how it works is if we're on a trip and the car has not been moving for a certain period of time, then there's a trigger. Or immediately on the phone, both for the driver and the rider, a message comes up asking, hey, are you okay? If you click, you're okay, that's okay. If you don't respond, then a call comes through. Then if that doesn't happen, then we dispatch emergency.
Because literally to wherever you are.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So those are two things that we've done in the recent past that we believe are more proactive towards like reducing incidences. And another thing that we do also is we verify our drivers. And so basically how this works is when a driver is active and offering trips, every so often there'll be a trigger from the app saying, hey, please take a selfie. We need to just confirm that it's actually you, Linda, using this profile. Yes. And we found that this actually really helps, because some of the incidences that we saw in the past were cases of, people kind of coming onto the platform using, say, either they use a car that doesn't belong to them, or they take another person's profile, those kind of things. And when people believe they are not likely to get caught, then they're more likely to do things, that are not ideal. And so we find when we're more stringent on, your profile is your own. It has always been that way, but sometimes, the reinforcement is what makes people adhere to what is the right thing to do. And so now it's very, very strict. If I have a profile as Linda and I decide to go and give it to my sister and she gets caught out on selfie check, then I lose in the end. Because who knows, my sister might be a criminal mastermind.
Correct.
And she wants to use my profile to go and, rob a bank. So these are the kind of things that we're trying to preempt and make sure that we have excellent quality drivers, so that we have quality service, so that they can earn a lot, because satisfied customers will always come back. And if customers come back, it means more money for the drivers. So it's a win-win. We're trying to create more virtuous cycles instead of vicious cycles.
Yeah. I mean, I know there is a touchy issue around driver compensation, and this is something not to Bolt alone, but globally, around, our drivers are fairly compensated. And of course, I think it comes from the fact that before the industry started, I remember this vividly. You know, a trip from where I currently live to the airport could easily have been something like 3,000 bob.
Yes.
Today, it's, I think, maybe slightly under 1,000. Is that something that you found sort of an equilibrium or a balance that works for both the business and the drivers? Because it just seems to be an issue that I know, again, not just in Kenya, globally, where the platform, of course, compensates based on certain economics, but the drivers in question sometimes do want to earn more, you know. But again, I also see cases where I've had conversations with drivers and they're like, look, it works for me. I own the vehicle and now I have a second and a third coming in.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's also maybe possibly the lifestyle of the driver and how often they drive. I don't know, but there seem to be two sides to this story. I don't know whether you want to comment on that as well.
Yes, it's true. And it's like you said, it's very multifaceted because it depends on a lot of things. And this is something we spend a lot of time on because even from like a core business point of view, if it doesn't work for the driver, it will not be sustainable for the business.
It's going to be a win-win across.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's a fundamental business principle in ride hailing. And what we found over time as we try and understand what are the underlying factors, it depends on a lot of things. For example, if somebody owns their car, it's very, very possible for them to earn decent money, like 100,000 plus, on a ride-hailing platform because they're not paying off a loan, they're not paying somebody for use of that car, and they've probably kept the car in good condition, and so the maintenance is not that high. So their net after all their expenses is decent.
It's decent, yeah.
Now, if somebody does not own a car, their overheads are much, much higher. And like in Kenya, we find that, so there's two things, right? You could be buying off your car and you could have taken your car from someone who sits in the office and they want you to give them, you know, whatever amount of money at the end of the day after you take the car and do your business with it. And surprisingly, this second lot where you rent a car from somebody else, that's where it's extremely difficult to make really good earnings from the service because a lot of car owners charge a lot and they charge per day. And it's not, I think it's because there's a lot of risk involved because you're giving this vehicle to someone maybe you don't know very well. And you don't know what they'll be doing with their vehicle the entire day. And a car is is subject to wear and tear, depending on where you take it, the kind of roads you're using, those kind of things. And so there's usually a premium attached to giving your car out. And so we find that cohort of drivers who are renting cars, it's tough for them. They have to work longer hours to actually make, you know, a decent living out of it. And that's why it depends on who you talk to. We have so many success stories, like you're saying. People come to us and they tell us, you know, when I was starting, we even had a really nice one where they told us when they were starting, they started as a border partner. They did their thing on the border. They saved up their money. They bought a car. Now they have like 3 cars. So they have the one that they use and then 2 others that they've given out to others.
Who are driving on their
Exactly.
behalf.
So now they become a fleet partner. And these are the kind of stories we want to create because ultimately it should be something that builds people. But we've realized now we kind of need to segment our driver partners so that we know how to help them. And so for this group that we've realized actually don't have the cars, we're trying to roll out different options to help them get the cars because that then is what is going to answer the earnings question. Not so much the pricing, but how can we make sure you're not losing a lot of money in terms of the costs so that you have more in your pocket at the end of the day.
You know, I'm really loving what you're saying because what you're telling me that there has been a perception that the platforms are sort of predatory on the drivers. But what you're telling me is that there's almost a welfare aspect to looking at the well-being and sort of the sustainability side of the drivers.
Yes.
The other thing I love that you talked about is, again, there's this overwhelming negative narrative around passengers or, can I call them riders who have had bad experiences? But also there are instances, and I've had these conversations also with some of your drivers where they also have had instances where they've been attacked,
yes,
or are put in a very compromised positioning,
yes,
when they're doing their trip, and they find themselves in a situation where they actually don't make money because the passenger is the problem.
yes,
And I'm loving hearing this other side of the story, that it's not just about the riders, it's also about the welfare of the drivers as well, right?
yes, yes. And actually, now that you say that, one of the things that we realized, because it's not that all the bad things happen on the driver's side, like you said. Sometimes, riders are also human.
Yes.
And where you have humans, you have mixed behavior. And so one of the things we're actually doing, the same way we have a selfie check for drivers, we're introducing a selfie check for riders as well.
Wow.
Because we believe that it's part of our obligation to keep our driver partners safe and to at least give them some sort of awareness of who they're carrying, where they're going. We also have another feature that we've launched that shows drivers, if you're going into a certain area, how do we rate it from a safety perspective?
Yes.
Because there are known areas that we've seen from our data where it's more likely, not necessarily that it will happen, but the likelihood is higher that there could be an incident just because of the nature of the place.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so we give drivers that liberty to kind of understand, okay, if you pick this passenger up, they're going there, and over there is not necessarily, the safest place. It's maybe it might be an amber zone or a red zone. It's not a green zone. So you can decide. You have the flexibility to decide if you want to take it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to come back to maybe a few steps back, so you're in this operations role.
Yes.
You then get the call, I presume, and that, hey, you've probably done presumably a wonderful job.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, Linda, we think you can run the gig. So tell us about that transition, and what was that like?
Yes.
And then what did you learn? And of course, the other thing that I have to mention is that you're a lady or a woman.
Yes.
And you're ascending now to a position in a very significant organization in the transport sector.
Yes.
In Kenya. Tell us a little bit about that journey and how that's going so far.
Right. So taking on the role is very interesting, I would say. I look at, when I get into new situations that are unknown, I think there's two ways you can look at new unknown situations, right? You can view it as a challenge, or you can view it as an opportunity.
Correct.
And so I looked at this as an opportunity. And what's very exciting for me now as a leader in this space is this industry is evolving and it grows so much, and it's real time.
It's
and
maturing, so to speak.
Yes, yes. And it's kind of the decisions that we make as a business, you will see the effect almost immediately, like on the day or the day after or the day after, like when we launch a new feature. Then you already start getting feedback. You already start having your driver partners telling you, wow, this thing works. Or they tell you, you need to refine 1, 2, 3 because of ABC, what we've seen on the road. And taking on this leadership role has exposed me to that. And it was initially a lot, because you can imagine as a country manager, then I have to stand not only in front of my team, my internal team, which I was kind of a bit used to, but now external partners, right? We have to meet with our driver partners. We have to engage. We have to talk through issues. Some of these issues are highly emotive issues.
Regulators.
Yes. Regulators as well, politicians as well. So these were spaces that I had not really truly been as the person at the front, right? It was always, I'm part of the team, especially in the consulting world. You're always part of the team, and your managing partner is one at the front, right? Now, I'm the person at the front.
And you're a woman.
Yes.
As well. And you're going to a space that maybe is clearly
very
male-dominated.
Exactly.
Correct. Yeah.
Exactly. So it was quite a shift for me. But I will say that it went really well. I was a bit apprehensive because, all those questions, right? I'm a woman, I'm standing in front of a lot of potentially maybe even older gentlemen. And also I am not young, but I know I look a little bit younger than I am. So sometimes that doesn't help. And so I was a bit apprehensive at first. But then I realized at the core of it all, from a business perspective, we all just want to make a sustainable living. Whether we're a driver partner, whether we're a platform operator, at least at that level, that's where our meeting point is. And so learning to frame conversations around that really helped, because then people stopped seeing Linda and they start seeing actually the Bolt platform and how it can help my life. And that's how we try and tailor our conversations, because I think that the face of the organization should not overshadow what the organization is trying to do. So that then if that face is not there tomorrow, the values that the organization lives by continue with the driver partners. And this is kind of what we keep reiterating to them. It's not about Linda. It's not even really about Bolt. It's about, is Bolt helping you to meet your goals as an entrepreneur, as a driver partner? And there were pluses really along the way, because then I got to meet a lot of female drivers who, in the past had felt maybe not fully understood, because it was a very heavy male-dominated space, right?
Yeah.
And now, at least when they see a female face, then they're kind of more open, because generally women tend to be a bit more reserved, especially in huge groups. And now they're a bit more open. They'd call me to the side and we'd talk about female issues in the transport
in the context
sector.
of the job, yes.
Yes, exactly. And these things are very important to me, because I, as a woman, I really, as an African woman, I think that there's a lot of things that African women can do, but society and our context sometimes holds us back. And so having that opportunity to interact with them in a space where I can actually create space for them to be, it's been quite amazing.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, I know for a fact, whenever I get picked up by a woman driver, I'm just happy. I don't know how to explain it. I just feel like, wow, a woman's driving me. Fantastic. I'm happy.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm a chauvinist or something. It's just that I just think it's so cool that, they're doing this stuff, and I think it's so fitting. I think tomorrow is International Women's Day. I hope that you'll be doing something for them as well.
Yes. We have a lot of things lined up for women partners. I think a very notable one is we ran a competition, and a woman driver won. And,
oh, wow.
And so it's very interesting that her husband is also a driver on the platform, and he's also a top driver on the platform.
Wow.
So,
family values.
Yes. So we're taking them to the Mara for a holiday.
Are you kidding me?
Yes.
Where do I sign up to be a driver? I'll go to the Mara.
I'll send you the link. But yeah, those kind of stories really, really make the job worth it. Because for me now, personally, the things that drive me is every day when I wake up and I do what I do at Bolt, is it ultimately helping the driver partners? Is it ultimately creating gainful employment? Because I think the advantage and the opportunity that we have as platform operators is we can actually amplify employment opportunities. And so if we can amplify the employment opportunities that are available for our young people, because the majority of our driver partners are young, and they find the ones that actually come and are serious and want to make something of themselves, they grow. And those things just make me see the potential of this business and how it can help so many lives and continue to grow the economy. So that does it for me.
What's so funny to me? Sometimes I have to be honest, I look at the rate, right? And I'm almost like, I have no idea how this guy is covering this cost.
Yeah.
And always add like an extra 100 or 200 shillings. Just almost I just feel like they deserve more, especially when it's a good driver.
Yes.
Like I'll give them a little extra, just so that, they get a little bit more out of it. But I imagine that happens a lot with your drivers, because there are many of us who are not saying that we'd have a lot of money. We're not like, sitting on loads of disposable income, but it almost feels like the right thing to do. Like they're doing such a good job. Why not top them up a little bit? I'm sure it happens a lot.
Yeah. And I think that's, I would say, a good approach in not just transport, but even service industry as well.
Yeah.
Because I don't think anybody will ever stand up and say, no, I have too much money, don't tip me. And I think that people should be rewarded for the work that they do, for good service, because really you went over and above. So I do encourage, if someone has a good ride experience, tip the driver. What we're not so happy about is if the driver, for example, says, you know what, this trip fare on the app is not ideal for me. So let's do this off the app and then you can pay me what you want. Now, that's not great, because then it, first of all, introduces safety concerns. Because if the trip is happening off the app, then features like the SOS button don't work. Features like trip are normally...
You're off the platform.
Yes, exactly. So we're not able to help. If you leave your phone, even if there was no incident, right? But then you leave your phone or your laptop or something, there's really no way.
There's no recourse
exactly. The driver comes and says, no, I didn't see it. And that's that. And so for us, that's not ideal. But tipping 100%, it's encouraged highly.
So let's talk about Bolt today in terms of your footprint in Kenya, how you guys are doing. I mean, you don't have to disclose specific numbers, but a little bird told me you might be the biggest in the market. I don't know how true that is. Maybe you can confirm that. The second thing I want to ask about is maybe the future and possibly that famous word nowadays, sustainability.
Yes.
Let's talk about those themes. Where are you today and what's the way going forward?
Right. So Bolt in Kenya, we're in about 8 urban centers. We're biggest in Nairobi and Mombasa. And
that's in terms of rides that you're doing?
Okay. Yes. And we're looking to expand our footprint. So where we are present, we want to grow our numbers. We want to be able to offer more rides in those areas and potentially even move to other areas where we're not in. That's a big ambition we have for 2024, 2025.
Yeah.
Because we've seen that there's a good environment for this industry in this country. And also back to my favorite point of the more we grow, the more employment opportunities we create. So it's kind of a win-win. And then in terms of sustainability, I one of my mantras is, the future is electric. And
I like that.
Yes, because the nature of transport is that it's not the best for the environment. Traditional transport, right?
Yes.
Because there's a lot of emissions that go into the atmosphere, which is not great for the world that we're living in. And so one of the things we're looking at in terms of future focus is how can we transition into more environmentally friendly alternatives. And the big piece we want to start with is electric bikes, because here in Kenya, the infrastructure has actually evolved sufficiently, I would say, to accommodate electric bikes, at least in Nairobi. And so this is something that we want to get into this year, actually probably Q2 early. In a few weeks, we should be doing something in the EV bike space. Yes, so very excited
about that. Hope you invite me for the launch of that.
Yes, you should come because we're quite excited about it. And I think that there's a lot of potential. It's good for the environment, and it's actually a cheaper bike to run than a traditional petrol bike. And so if it's a cheaper bike to run, and if we can come in as Bolt with our partners and make it cheaper to buy, that means for the driver partner, you spend less buying the bike, you spend less servicing and maintaining the bike. And so in the end, you have more in your pocket. So it's a win-win for everybody. So it's a very exciting thing that we're about to launch. And we'll keep you posted when it happens, but very soon. Yes.
Okay. I just have a few more questions for you. The other thing I want you to talk about is maybe women in leadership in the area of technology in the context of Kenya. What are your thoughts around that? How do we get more women doing what you're doing, leading organizations like you are, and sort of include that, more inclusivity, so to speak, from that perspective? And then I think the other thing I'd like to hear from you is, as Bolt is sort of building a more robust and a larger network in the country, what are some of the things that we can anticipate or hope to see coming from yourselves going forward?
Okay. Yes, women in technology, women in the tech space is another topic that's quite important to us. And like last year, we had, we called it Women in Tech internship.
Oh, nice.
Because when I look at the Kenyan landscape specifically, a lot of women actually are very good at tech and coding and, everything in the ICT space. But then sometimes the exposure or the job opportunities in this space for women is a bit limited. And so one of the things that we came up with is we want to be that business that actually proactively includes women from when they're very young. because in the tech space, the younger you start, the more agile and dexterous your brain is, so you can like keep it going.
Yes.
And again, in the tech space, it's always not necessary, but it's very helpful if you can actually do it before you become a leader in the space.
So understand the workings, so to speak.
Exactly. So even if you're not the person writing code in the end, as a leader, you understand the person writing code and you understand why they do what they do. So this is kind of our thought process towards it. So you come in young, you continue doing what you're doing. We have a very big, like we're an app, as we said. And basically the crux of our business is making sure that that app runs seamlessly so that it can connect the drivers to the riders in real time and kind of manage every situation that can happen before the trip starts, during, and after. And so there's a lot of back-end work. There's a lot of back-end coding, engineering, product development. And these are the spaces we want to expose our girls to, especially in Africa and Kenya, to be selfish because I'm here.
Of course.
Yeah. And so that was one of the things that we are, we try to do with our internship. And we are rolling out a program very soon also with a coding partner, where we will now try and extend that beyond those who are already in the field. Like if you're university studying in these spaces, then you come in for the internship. But what if you're not in the university and maybe you have the potential for it? Exactly. So we want to go more into the informal spaces and try and find that raw talent.
And those underserved areas of the country.
Correct.
Exactly. In those communities.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Yes. So that's one of the, because it's, like I said, I think it's something very close to my heart. Like if we can help women to be empowered and to do what they need to do in this country, I think we'll go far. I mean, no offense to men, but
no. I think
that women can do a lot.
Yeah. Yes. Just like your lady drivers.
Exactly.
And maybe just if you have any last thing you want to say, anything that your parting shot, so to speak, as we bring our conversation to an end.
I think I would say that, we as Bolts, we're committed to Kenya. I'm Kenyan. I'm committed to this country. I really like this space. It's a challenging space, but it's a space full of opportunities. And the business views it in the same way. There are a lot of things we can do with the government, with our driver partners, with the wider community to just build this nation. And so we're here. And we're here to stay. And the future is looking bright. There'll be a lot of great things that will be coming out of Bolts.
And the future is electric.
Yes, very much so.
Linda, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We really appreciate this. And I think for me, what you've done is you sort of taken away the layers to sort of give us that inside story, what is Bolt doing in a sort of multidimensional way. Mm-hmm. And I'm so delighted to hear about, your gender initiatives and how you're really trying to elevate women in Kenya across technology and also your driver partners.
Yeah.
So we're excited to see what you're going to accomplish in 2024. It sounds like you have some pretty big targets.
Yes.
And more important, also the innovation and the changes that are coming in this space.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So there you have it, Linda from Bolts, the country manager, who's given us incredible insights on what they're doing as a business and also how they're empowering their drivers and their riders across their many initiatives and making also women and safety focal points of the things that they're changing in the transportation sector. Thank you so much for joining us today again on Pure Digital Passion Podcast. With me, Moses Kemibaro, and we'll catch you in the next one.